Parivrajakacharya Stotra Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotra Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se Koho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Ghora Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto 3, Chapter 14, Text 15 to 16. Atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ sorry. A little bit of trouble here. Kāmam,
kāmam,
kamala-locana,
kamala-locana,
ārta,
ārta,
upasarpaṇaṁ,
upasarpaṇaṁ,
bhūmann,
bhūman,
amogham,
amogham,
hi,
hi,
mahīyasi,
mahīyasi,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūmann,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūmann,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūmann,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūmann,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi.
amogham hi mahīyasi.
Please repeat.
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūman,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi. atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūman,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi. atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūman,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūmann,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi.
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ,
kāmam kamala-locana,
kāmam kamala-locana,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūman,
ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman,
amogham hi mahīyasi,
amogham hi mahīyasi.
Mother.
atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ, kāmam kamala-locana, ārtopasarpaṇaṁ, bhūman, amogham hi mahīyasi.
Atha,
atha,
therefore,
therefore,
me,
me,
unto me,
unto me,
kuru,
kuru,
kindly do,
kindly do,
kalyāṇaṁ,
kalyāṇaṁ,
benediction,
benediction,
kāmam,
kāmam,
desire,
desire,
kamala-locana,
kamala-locana,
O lotus-eyed one,
O lotus-eyed one,
ārta,
ārta,
of the distressed,
of the distressed,
upasarpaṇaṁ,
upasarpaṇaṁ,
the approaching,
the approaching,
bhūmann,
bhūman,
O great one,
O great one,
amogham,
amogham,
without failure,
without failure,
he,
he,
certainly,
certainly,
mahīyasi,
mahīyasi,
to a great person.
to a great person.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Jai. O lotus-eyed one, kindly bless me by fulfilling my desire. When someone in distress approaches a great person, his pleas should never go in vain. Purport. Diti knew well that her request might be rejected because of the untimely situation, but she pleaded that when there is an emergency or a distressful condition, there is no consideration of time or situation. Text 16. iti tang vira maricha karpanam bahubashinim pratyahanunayan vacha pravrithananga kashmalam. O hero Vidura, Diti, thus being thus afflicted by the contamination of lust, and therefore poor and talkative, was pacified by the son of Marichi in suitable words. Purport: when a man or a woman is afflicted by the lust of sex desire, it is to be understood as sinful contamination. Kashyapa was engaged in his spiritual activities, but he did not have sufficient strength to refuse his wife, who was thus afflicted. He could have refused her with strong words expressing impossibility, but he was not as spiritually strong as Vidura. Vidura is thus addressed here as a hero, because no one is stronger in self-control than a devotee of the Lord. It appears that Kashyapa was already inclined to have sexual enjoyment with his wife, and because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only by pacifying words. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yeda Tasmai Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svaimrupa Karamahyam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Atha Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Zahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shankam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Rata Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Varandavaneshwari Varshabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasinabheva Chapatitanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyareshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Atha me kuru kalyāṇaṁ kāmam kamala-locana ārtopasarpaṇaṁ bhūmann amogham mahīyasi. O lotus-eyed one, kindly bless me by fulfilling my desire. When someone in distress approaches a great person, his pleas should never go in vain. So, we understand, of course, that this is all being explained upon Vidura inquiring how the slaying of Hiranyaksha came about. So naturally their origins are being described. And we see that it all came about of that to a degree, of course. But we see that this distress that she's feeling as a result of this, it's described as contamination of lust. Why is it described as contamination? Well, because, of course, there's a basic philosophical understanding that we come to this world which is predicated upon this basic sex attraction between male and female, and we're all attempting to enjoy separately from Krishna. And so therefore this desire, when it is not specifically when it's not being engaged in devotional service, it is deemed contamination. So we see that the interesting thing is that she's speaking very highly, and she's pleading, making this case to Kashyapa Muni in hopes that her desires will not go unfulfilled. But the thing is that the purport, as Prabhupada is saying, that that Kashyapa Muni is also weak. Why is he weak? Because he's not actually trying to, he's pacifying her. It says pacify, but we see that obviously we know how the pastime goes. Obviously that how good was that was his words which were to pacify her if they still ended up engaging in the act after all. Which means that the words weren't enough. The instruction wasn't enough. her desires essentially had to be fulfilled even at the expense of not listening to the instruction that of which was given. And that's a pretty important point. If we look, for example, at the comparison, we compare Dhruva Maharaj, who also had material desires. He was offended, and he was deeply pained by the words of, was it Suruchi? Suruchi, not Suniti, but Suruchi. I always get the names mixed up. Anyways, I'm just reading this pastime. But upon being offended by his mother, both mothers suggest that you should go and render devotional service. One, of course, says, Suruchi tells him that your best hope of achieving what you want is to ultimately leave your body, and then you can be reborn and take birth from my womb, because your father favors me instead of the womb from which you were born. So that's your best hope. And the only way you can actually have that happen is if you go and render devotional service. It's a pretty messed up thing to say. It's like incredibly harsh, actually. And tell somebody you should leave your body, and maybe you take another body, then maybe you'll have your desires fulfilled. Of course, we can understand that she's still encouraging Dhruva Maharaj to render devotional service, so there's that. It's said that you can't really dovetail envy in devotional service. I wouldn't say this is necessarily a case of that, but anyway, she's still prescribing it. Of course, we understand that. Upon being frustrated and hearing this, Dhruva Maharaj then goes to his mother Suniti, who cries and laments, but then also recognizes that ultimately Suruchi is right. If one wants to have any desire achieved, whether it's material or spiritual, the best option out of what you have is to render devotional service under the Supreme Lord, which he listens and he goes and does this. Now, of course, the interesting thing here is that he goes and Narada Muni takes interest, and he tests Dhruva Maharaj, and he tells him that you're better off just going back home, and you're so young, you're offended, but you should go home. This is really quite difficult. Many yogis take to this, and it's not so easy to achieve what you want to achieve. But here's where the key difference actually comes in, is that Dhruva Maharaj recognizes not just that he's in a distressful situation, but he also recognizes his nature and his conditioning upon that. And he tells Narada Muni, he's like, well, go home. I have this Kshatriya blood that runs through me. I don't know humility. He wants to fulfill his desire, and he wants to achieve that which he knows he can't have as a result of rendering service unto the demigods. So he asks for a more suitable instruction. But it's not that he goes and tries to achieve his desires separate from the instruction that of which is given. He recognizes where he's at, and there's still some sincerity, we can say, that's demonstrated in this. And of course, we understand that after he goes, he ends up getting his desires fulfilled ultimately. Whereas Diti, on the other hand, who doesn't listen, has two of the greatest demons born from her womb as a result, which we understand cause so many problems. So that's the understanding. That one of the main takeaways we can say is from this is that nothing but inauspiciousness can follow as a result of not listening to the Guru. The instructions that of which he gives are not to be neglected, not to be disregarded, and to be followed all the way through. So Dhruva Maharaj not only he recognizes his position, he recognizes his nature, and there's work within that. Whereas Diti, on the other hand, is unwilling to recognize this. Well, specifically because she's deluded by lust, we can understand that the intelligence is also eroded as well. It is described that she's poor and talkative. And generally, when it's describing that she's just talkative, it's not like she's saying things that are like, it is said to indicate that she's not speaking with sense, because that's the symptoms of somebody who's actually deluded by lust and material contamination. Their senses are carried away by attraction to the sense objects. So that's one of the symptoms of one who's of actually every living entity who's, of course, not engaged in devotional service. We can understand that they're carried away by the senses. They're not able to actually properly discern and use discrimination, nor are they able to recognize their own unfortunate position as well. And as a result of this, we see cases where people are swayed by the emotions, whether it's great happiness, great distress, rage, depression, all these extreme swings on the emotional platform, being on the completely and totally at the whim, of the emotion, is because it's not actually able to be checked by intelligence because it's not present. So one who is actually able to maintain equilibrium amongst having this desire, we understanding that they're properly situated. Of course, there's the understanding that specifically the man's body is best for practicing austerity. It said that when this virya flows upward, one doesn't just gain willpower, increase the memory, determination, strength. Overall health and well-being is increased as a result of this great austerity, which we see very few people practicing nowadays. So many of our book distributors, especially at these colleges now, they'll describe that when they see a lot of these young men walking around nowadays, they're just like completely and totally drained because it's all flowing down and out and just being wasted, spilling your brains, people call it. And there's just like nothing there, just completely dull, you know. And it's unfortunate. And as a result of that, we see that I was going to bring this up here, but the point is made, at least in Brahmacharya and Krishna consciousness, you know, this being aware of mixing with women, of course, mixing between men and women, but there's also warning about mixing with men who also have a womanly attitude. And we see that that's what comes about when one is not actually controlling their senses ultimately. So of course we can understand that one who is controlled, they're able to control themselves. There's a level of I guess you could say, not empowerment, but for lack of better words, control, I guess you could say, that comes about from this. And it's for this reason, especially that the male form of life gives one this ability that whenever there are situations like this, like we have described in the Bhagavatam, where there's attraction between man and woman, the man can always stop it. And if he doesn't, he's at fault. Because he has that intelligence and he should see and he should be able to discern, okay, this is not something that should be engaged in, you know. So even though we understand that Diti ends up, you know, as it's described later, I don't want to go too far ahead, but she ends up practically forcing herself upon Kashyapa Muni. Still, it's described here clearly in the purport that he didn't strongly try, he only used words in order to try to pacify her. It wasn't really this real attempt to actually stop the acts from coming about. Why? Because he was very much attracted to his wife. It's described beautiful Diti. And she's very beautiful. But nevertheless, even though being engaged in sacrifice, he didn't find the strength to say no. And that's pretty key. So ultimately, yes, we can understand that the man is at fault. He's at fault here. And you'll even see this in a lot of cases. Now, of course, it's not always in a fair manner, I guess you could say. Generally, when there's cases of there being some sort of, maybe not sexual assault, but when there's issues, especially like in terms of in law between man and woman, generally the court is a lot more likely to go in the favor of the woman. We see that time and time again, because there's that level of responsibility that should be there. And of course, there's so many other things that could be said about that. That can be skewed in a lot of situations, especially in cases of divorce. But the larger point that I'm trying to drive home with here is that the man is always supposed to take that responsibility. He's expected to uphold that. Specifically in the relationship between men and women in marriage, the man is seen, the husband is seen as he's to be the guru of the wife. And why? Because it's his duty, materially they're supposed to be giving of children, which Mahotsa Prabhu spoke on yesterday. the man is expected to give his wife children and to provide for the household, of course. But spiritually, of course, spiritually as well, that guidance has to be there. I think he was said that the husband takes on 50% of the sins and also 50%, then gives 50% of this accumulated pious credit, I believe, to the wife. So it's of course, for the husband, it might seem like a bad bargain, but of course we can understand that if the man and the woman are properly situated, it's a burden, yes, but as Guru Maharaj describes, the relationship between the disciple and the guru is a burden of love. So similarly, if one is engaged in this and there's submission from the wife to the husband, and not this competition that's present between the two, then one should one should assume that they're, again, qualified and able to fulfill that, that responsibility. They should take that responsibility in full and go on doing so. So we see here ultimately that Diti is, as a result of not, I would say it's more this doubt that that sticks out to me specifically in the purport. There's a level of doubt that she's feeling that her desires will ultimately be fulfilled, and which is why she's feeling the need to to speak so nicely to Kashyapa Muni, calling him "O lotus-eyed one," and glorifying his position, speaking nicely to him. Of course, speaking too much, it says here, as she's talkative, but it's all in pursuit of achieving her desires, ultimately because she's feeling that there's some doubt that it won't actually happen. Why is this problematic? Because when one seeks instruction or one takes a position of servitude to the guru, the understanding is not just that one should be fully dependent, but one should have full faith in the instruction of the guru. And that should manifest in the form of fully following as well. Not just that we hear and we go and do what we want as a result of that. And this can be extended to so many things. We have doubts or inquiries in our Christian consciousness, especially early on. It's the duty of the disciple to put forth their questions, their inquiries, and see to it that those doubts are slain with the sword of knowledge ultimately. And we've seen that when people don't do that, it can result in either big philosophical deviations, potential fall downs, or even worse, ultimately a fall from devotional service altogether. So there's responsibility, of course, for one who's in this position of power, you could say, the guru, but there's also responsibility on behalf of the disciple as well to act properly within that relationship. There's roles that are to be fulfilled. And of course we see that the danger of not using that doubt properly can culminate in destruction to one's own spiritual life as well as others around us. If you can actually pull up in this connection, Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, Text 30. Specifically speaking about the function of intelligence. Sangshayo tha viparyaso nishchaya smritiryevacha swapa ityuchate buddhir lakshanam vritti tah partak. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. Now, it says doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word sangshaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning, but doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction, and we see that destruction ultimately follows. Because there is doubt that I will get what I want. And ultimately, this mentality is actually wrong altogether, we can understand, because we should understand that the guru is to be satisfied before oneself It's not that we endeavor for our own sense gratification, or that we render service on the basis that we will have our own desires fulfilled, but it's, of course, to be done in a selfless manner altogether. So again, this danger of not fully following can also be a little bit harped on. I was going through Purport and I found it was a little heavy, but it was a very nice letter in this connection I wanted to share. This is back in 1997, Guru Maharaj was writing to it. I don't believe it was a direct disciple, but somebody was having issues with their own guru, to the point where they felt it necessary to just almost outright reject them, which is most dangerous. So it reads here. Basically, to give a little context, this person had received some chastisement from their guru. They didn't like it, and they said some they pretty much blasphemed them. And Guru Maharaj responds to them, and this is his response to them. The chastisement of the guru is a sign of his acceptance of the disciple. First, because he takes the trouble to correct him, and second, because he has faith that the disciple will trust the guru enough to accept the chastisement in the right spirit. Try to understand. He knows better than you what you need. That's why you accept the guru. The guru is the personification of the personal interest and kindness of Krishna. That is why the devotee should surrender to the guru. Are you so superficial that you think kindness means simply smiling all the time? I've seen that some devotees idolize their guru like the mundane hero worship of sports, cinema, and music stars. They collect photos of him, constantly talk of his exploits with great relish and reverence, and appear to be completely absorbed in thoughts of him. But the real test of their devotion, however, comes when they are called upon to surrender to him. No amount of showy adulation is as important as this test. Are you ready to follow his order? If not, you are in very serious trouble. He says this in all caps. From the tone of your letter, it seems that you are on the verge of falling into the terrible pit of Maha Vaishnava aparad caused by rejecting your guru. Unless you pull yourself together right now, you are going to on the path leading to hell. You may not like me saying this, but that is the fact. If you want to save yourself from the worst of hells, immediately draft a letter of apology to your most merciful Gurudev. It is to be from the heart. Tell him that you are ready to do whatever he orders, even if it is against your personal desire, and even if it means going to some unstated location. And then just do that. And then do just that. Do whatever he says. Give your money, your camera, your computer, everything to him, and start life again as a simple brahmachari. Be ready to do whatever you are told. That is the only way you can be happy. So it's a great warning that we see from this letter. But specifically just reinforcing that point that higher than just flattery of the guru, or higher than flattery of somebody is actually following their instruction when it's given, especially if it's given in your best interest. So it's quite an interesting situation we could find ourselves in, especially, at least I'll speak for myself, you begin rendering devotional service, and it's not just that, at least you're starting to realize how contaminated you actually are. We might come in and think that, oh, this is easy, everything's nice, I could do this forever, and then like a week or two in, you start to realize like, oh, this actually means like I don't get to do all these things I was doing previously, and I'm actually heavily attached to those things. And then also desires start to surface that you're not used to being able to just immediately try to gratify all the time. We start to realize how attached we are, and actually how weak we are in the face of Maya specifically. Diti's position is quite similar to this. Ultimately, most people, especially when they're distressed in the material world, this is like a basic understanding that nobody's happy in the material world, everybody's suffering. But as a means of trying to mitigate that distress, generally we turn to whatever fleeting pleasures we can find, whatever fleeting pleasures we can find in the form of like cheap thrills. Hence, like it said in this letter, it was mentioning music stars and cinema and sports, all these different things that we try to engage ourselves in. And this attempt to mitigate our distress is further reinforced by, if you look at this culture of being a consumer. We were talking, I remember we went to the bank, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, and you walk in, and the place is like nice, it's clean, and they have like this ad playing on the TV, and it's not just like, oh, you can open a bank account, but your kids can open a bank account too, and you can start them spending like, from such a young age. It's already trying to train them to be a consumer. So the largest thing with that is we live in a society that of which is encouraging people to just immediately try to gratify their desires. You want something, you should be able to get it. And now that you're, you don't have to be this age in order to get a credit card and a phone and have so many access to these different things. You can get it at an even earlier age now, and you can start going for these things. What's the problem? No holds barred. Go as much as you want. Have as much as you want. And we see that the problem is with this, of course, is not just that the distress, the relief one tries to get from that distress is temporary. That's not good enough as becoming more readily available. So now it's extending to not just you can try to get all these different things that you want, but you can also try to change your identity as well. Whether it's I identify with this genre, or it's like especially prominent now. All you would know more than anything, and Chandan, since you guys are dealing with this social media, you see how popular these content creators are becoming now and how much influence they have. You can, a lot of these companies and these brands are seeing this as well, and they're so much more willing to do their advertising through these content creators who have influence on the platform, because they know that people who follow them will also try to buy into whatever they're representing. So you can buy into whatever identity it is that you like, whether it fits you or not. You have people, at least I can easily go on and on about this one, because this is a lot of what I was looking at on Instagram was like gym content, for example. Different people you might follow for exercises or diet plans, whatever it might be within that field. You have people that are pushing protein, they're pushing different shirts and shoes, and this you can buy this, and you can buy these shoes because it's like less impact and it's better for your tendons in the long run, and you can buy this and you can buy that, and you're buying into this this culture. Or another one I was vaguely into, it was like it's kind of like a more niche thing. Anyways, a little bit of an overshare, but it's driving home the same point. Like dark academia, for example, people with like this like kind of brooding atmosphere. I don't know if you like heard of that. You can get like, you see people with like, they like these, I don't know, it's like people, if I had to describe it, it's like people who I guess are like into just like study, like lone study, or just like this like dark kind of like mysterious kind of atmosphere. So you can buy the shoes that they like to wear. You can buy whatever clothes that they're wearing. You can buy the stuff that they have on their desk. No comment. But it goes to show that people will see something like, yeah, that's me. I want that. I want to feel like that. I want to see myself like that. And of course, because people are ignorant of the relationship with Krishna, then they try to find whatever fleeting taste they can find in all these different things as well. And these attempts are always frustrated because, again, the basic understanding, of course, that you're not the body applies, but we see that people try to create their soul persona, it doesn't work, and it just facilitates more of their frustration and deeper attachment to the material world. You can also pull up in this connection the cause of distress in general. It's Bhagavatam, Canto 3, chapter 26, text 8. Another understanding is the living entity, is the cause of all the distress. Karya karana kartartve karanam prakritim viduhu bhoktartve sukkadukhanam purusham prakritih param. The cause of the conditioned soul, the material body and senses, and the senses presiding deities, the demigods, is the material nature. This is understood by learned men. The feelings of happiness and distress of the soul who is transcendental by nature, are caused by the spirit soul himself. So we cause our own suffering, and then we facilitate that by trying to mitigate it because we don't actually have a means of taking to any higher activity. Higher activity. So this is one of the more basic points, especially that we see. Like I said, this understanding like that the material world is a place of distress. It's not somewhere to be. Our acharyas have said this is no place for a gentleman. I'm more inclined to speak on basic subject matters because I'm not so advanced at all, and this is pretty much where my current understanding is limited to. But I can at least understand. My Guru Maharaj was making this point in a lecture. Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj was making this point in a lecture. It's called A Philosophical Outlook on Distress. He broke down some of it, like, we obviously we take different bodies, and there's distress all within that, and then we try to more or less find some sort of remedy in order to fix these things. But without having this basic philosophical understanding, it's pretty difficult to try to progress anything higher. Any sort of higher subject matters that is predicated on these basic understandings. And we see that with devotees in our movement, for example. There's conflict or disagreements over, for example, who's running in office. If one actually was reading Prabhupada's books, there shouldn't be like this. Like, we're not involved in politics, so it's like what's going on there? There's not this. Nobody who's running in office, especially who isn't practicing, is going to have any sort of knowledge of what the problems of life are and actually how to fix them. So why are devotees getting involved in worrying about who's going to win and who's going to go in office? Are certain situations going to perhaps like affect us in some way? Ultimately, yeah, but we understand that devotees are supposed to take full shelter of the Guru and take full shelter of Krishna. It's not like we're going out and voting and then at that encouraging other people to also engage in the same useless activity. So basic understandings that, our distress can't be fixed by other people who are also in distress, and then at that are also in ignorance of the distress that we're in. It's it's indicative of those basic philosophical points not actually being clear and understood. So, my Guru Maharaj makes a point that we should it should be consistently discussed and understood that this is a distressful place. This isn't somewhere we want to be. And especially I have to tell myself that often, because obviously there is so much of this attraction that's still there to mundane activities, even despite having the philosophical understanding that this isn't something which will be best for me, and it isn't best for anybody to actually engage in. Also just speaks to the fact that intelligence in and of itself, one might be practicing, strictly as a brahmachari or be very dedicated to their practice, but if there's not actual attachment to serving the Guru, then they can also fall down from that position as well. So just being attached to gaining some sort of potency and being known as just a staunch, strong brahmachari, there's a reason why a lot of staunch, strong brahmacharis aren't staunch, strong brahmacharis today, because it wasn't something they were able to maintain. It has to be properly, that position is, it's not that we're so much identifying with this varna. It's the service to the Guru that should be there. That's the chief motivation that should be there. All this understanding about, mundane sex attraction between men and women, and man's body is more fit for practicing austerity. All that understanding should be there. But identifying too strongly with that secondary motivation, if it's not actually like supplementary to just serving the Guru and actually rendering selfless service, that's not going to be a position that one can maintain. So many people understand this fatal sex attraction between men and women, but how many people get married? A lot. So we should understand what the proper platform to practice on. I mean, what's the proper platform to practice on? I always found this, or not, one thing I found it's amazing, you read these letters in Padre Pradesh, and sometimes somebody's having so much difficulty they're expressing in their devotional service, and Guru Maharaj, and they're praying for blessings, and Guru Maharaj is also asking for blessings. It's like he's pure devotee. It's like he's on like the topmost platform. Of course, this is instructional that we should never think ourselves above the influence of the material nature, you know. But this, what was I going to say? This, forgive me, I kind of lost myself a little bit. The point is, yeah, we should even if we're practicing devotional service on one platform, we should always understand that we can fall from that if we're not careful. I was joking. I think this was maybe some time ago. I was joking with you that I was chanting japa in the morning, and I had like some disturbing thoughts come in my mind, and I was like, gosh, it's like I really wish this wasn't here. So I was like, started chanting more attentively, and that thought, it goes away, and I was like, oh great, okay, free. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. It's like then I start falling asleep. It's like the minute you think you're free from one form of Maya, it creeps in another way. So there's no guarantee actually, you know, that the minute we think that we're free and above these modes, immediately that in and of itself is Maya. So it's really crazy. It's amazing. So, anyways, this larger point I just wanted to drive home. We have a responsibility to our guru, to not just be an order supplier, or to act as an order supplier, not to view our guru as our order supplier, like we see Diti doing here with Kashyapa Muni, but to understand that the perfection of the disciple's position is of again being that order supplier to the guru, not vice versa. Because when that position and the roles aren't understood, then nothing auspicious comes about. So it's quite a dangerous position we could find ourselves in. I'm going to go ahead and open up for questions, comments, chastisements, concerns, if any are present.
So it's a couple of interesting things. A lot of things actually. That this word kalyāṇa is used widely in India, especially South India, to refer to marriage. It's interesting because the word kalyāṇa is also understood as auspicious. In fact, that's the primary meaning of it. But they always use this word in terms of marriage, which means that marriage is supposed to bring auspiciousness, not inauspiciousness. It's generally viewed as something auspicious because, as it is explained a couple of verses later, it is the institution of marriage that maintains the entire varnashram system, especially the ashrams. The ashrams are all completely maintained by the one ashram, which is the grihastha ashram. Therefore, the grihastha ashram can and must bring auspiciousness to the other activities that can be described later. But here, Diti uses this word kalyāṇaṁ in the verse that we read today. O lotus-eyed one, kindly bless me by fulfilling my desire. When someone in distress approaches a great person, his pleas should never go in vain. And Prabhupada so appropriately comments that because she feared her request might be rejected, she pleaded that it's an emergency. So this is one of the reasons why she's considered to be talkative, because she is creating an emergency where there is none. And the plea is that when such a statement is made, the person who's making it has no brain, and the attempt is to make the person who's hearing also cast their brain aside. And and what's very interesting is that this person in illusion who vouches for an emergency talks about auspiciousness when actually there is none, and argues for an exception to standard procedures that ensure auspiciousness. This can be seen. I mean, it's very common that those who don't want to abide by the laws of material nature, or specifically by the rules and regulations of Shastra, laid down in Shastra, will bring up such kind of arguments and claim that their situation is an exception. And it is a very standard procedure in the world in order for one's selfish ends, that one turns exceptions, or one constantly refers to exceptions as if they are the rule that needs to be applied right now. They talk of it as if it's an exception, but the number of times that they refer to the exception is so often that it basically turns into the norm. It's a common argument. The other point I wanted to make in the following verse, which is commenting about Kashyapa's inclination to have sexual enjoyment, is that it can be seen that so he said he did not have sufficient strength to refuse his wife. He was not as spiritually strong. Now we see that when he's speaking, even though he was inclined to engage with Diti, he didn't immediately agree to her request. He tries, sort of in a feeble way, insufficiently, to refuse her. But it's evident that he's not. And so this is another thing. When a person is spiritually weak, they can only go so long in hoping that circumstances are in their favor for them to stay Krishna conscious. But that time will run out. Then circumstances will so arise where one is put to the test. And at that point, even though the devotee may feebly try to refuse it, eventually he will yield into it. And sometimes the devotee may even think that I've tried to refuse it, but I can't. Now Krishna must protect me and I'm going to go for it. But no, he'll suffer the consequences nevertheless. That's another maya that happens when you're about to fall down. Is you sort of try to refuse, and you think you've done your duty, and now you throw caution to the winds, and you go for it, and you say, Krishna has to save me because I tried. But the thing is, the real trying is to make oneself spiritually strong by understanding one's desires and knowing that these desires can thwart us just when the circumstances are right. If one doesn't try to work on these desires, which are those anarthas, and just hopes that, just hides them in some dark chamber within the heart, and act as if it doesn't exist because he never opens that door, then you have this common cartoon that's there of the Grim Reaper knocking on one door after another, and then there's blood flowing out. They generally have some names for each one or something. It's a meme. But it's just a matter of time before Maya comes and opens that door, because she knows which door it is. Because she's outside the door and she's inside the door too. So she'll open that door, and then you're helpless because you look at it and it's your object of desire. Kashyapa was not a strong man, so he tries to dissuade her. It doesn't really work. And more could be said, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. Especially, like you said, is being aware of the desire, and actually actively engaging in devotional service, and addressing those points, especially. That's what I'm realizing. It's like, it's not, obviously, yeah, by engaging in devotional services, we will get purified. There's that understanding, but it's not just like I'm going to go on whimsically, not cognizant of what I have to work on, and Krishna will take care of this for me. It has to be that conscious effort is what I'm seeing, especially where I need to work in my own spiritual life. So it's quite important. Yes.
Another thing about the point you made about the man is always at fault. It's true that the man is always at fault because the woman can get raped, whereas a man can't. If they argue, well, no, it is possible. There have been cases.
So many arguments about that now.
Well, that's because the men, it's hard to be controlled. That's the simple reason. It's difficult. But the example of the dhira is there that Srila Prabhupada would give, quoting from Kalidasa's Kumara Sambhava, that Parvati, half-naked Parvati, approaches Lord Shiva, who is sitting under a tree and meditating, and she's sent by the demigods because it is Kumara Sambhava. They need Kartikeya to be born because he is the commander-in-chief of the demigods, and they need him to be born to fight some demons. Specifically, there's one demon called Surapadman that Kartikeya appears to kill. And they realize that this Kartikeya has to be the son of Lord Shiva. He has to have the potency of Lord Shiva without all the detachment that Lord Shiva has. Right. So they send Parvati, and what does Parvati do? She can't get his attention. He's sitting in meditation. He won't even look at anybody. So how is she supposed to get his attention? She tries to go and touch his private parts. That's the story. Prabhupada gives this example. Multiple times Prabhupada gives this example. Nothing. That's an example of a woman trying to go for a man.
Really go for him.
So, but she can't do anything. Then anyways, finally, Shiva does yield, but not like this. He yields out of his own volition by the prayers of the demigods and this and that. Not that he could be excited like a mundane, lusty man.
So, Vishnu Chitta Prabhu's comment just now, and then you guys were talking a little bit together. The point was that you shouldn't just like sweep your anartas under the carpet and just ignore them, act like they don't exist. But at the same time, we shouldn't like meditate on them. We should like. Anyways, my question is. In some situations, you may want to put your material desires on the back burner and then maybe plan to engage in karma yoga later in life. And that, I don't know. For instance, marriage. karma yoga, engaging your material desires in Krishna service. No.
You can still
Well,
be
say for
devotional.
instance, you like, within the realm of marriage, you start a business, you get all this going, and then you engage. That's what I mean. Is like that's not karma. But wait. But if you have like a business, you have your whole like material situation. Because you have material desires, you set up this material situation while engaging in devotional service. That's karma yoga, right? Okay, anyways. Aside from that misconception I just revealed about myself, the question is, what's the difference between, like in some situations, you should neglect your anartas, right? But then there's this comment that we should not neglect our anartas. So what's the
practical,
balance? Like, what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, so there's of course, if we're especially early on in devotional service, these things are revealed to us. When you're under direct instruction, especially, you're getting that direct oversight. These things are revealed to you, where you need to work. So even without you maybe trying to directly figure it out or meditate upon it, it will be like pointed out to you that this is a problem you should address. You need to work on this. Why? Because this is affecting your spiritual life in this manner. That's not going to be conducive for your practice. So, I guess the practical way, we're cognizant of our conditioning, but we're not lamenting over the fact that it's there, and we're not meditating on the fact that it's there, and also thinking that, oh well, I can't change because I have this conditioning, and it's not gonna, because of my conditioning this, because of my conditioning that. There's like we'll see in like Bhaktivinoda Thakur's like bhajans, his prayers, he's lamenting about his position, but he's begging for the mercy of the Supreme Lord at the same time, and it's like, okay, so and of course again, we understand he's a pure devotee. He's describing our position actually, but yeah, I mean, I guess it could be a tough thing. I guess like for me, like what I've seen, at least what I'm seeing is, if the contamination is still there and it surfaces in our activity, when it surfaces and you realize that this is something you have to work on, we recognize this is our conditioning, but we still go on in our devotional service. So it's not that it's meditated upon to the point where it obstructs us carrying out devotional service. So that's like, for example, like when it should be put aside. If I'm performing my duty and I screw up, and I know, like me personally, I have a tendency to meditate on things I mess up on, but because I'm meditating on something I messed up on, I mess up on something else because I'm letting that get in the way. So I'm recognizing my conditioning is there, but then I'm letting it obstruct my going on a devotional service. So you have to recognize it when it comes up, pray for the mercy, but you don't meditate on it. And it's not that you're sweeping it aside either by not paying any attention, but I'm recognizing this is my position, I have to go on struggling in devotional service, what to do. So you recognize it when it comes up, but you don't meditate upon it. And hopefully, at least in my case, like Krishna's mercy, I keep on struggling, and maybe if not this lifetime or the next, we just hope to get purified of it, and we keep struggling, and you go on with the process, and that's that. But there's a stark difference between like meditating on something, and it's like, oh, I can't, I wish I didn't have this, how do I fix this? Versus you recognize when it comes up and you just continue on. It's still there, I got to keep on working what to do. So, if I get to sum it up, again, you just, like I said, you recognize and you just carry on. That's all. That's the best. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I feel like I kind of expanded on that more than I needed to. Anybody else? Anything? Okay. Mataji?
Oh, jeez.
In your in your class, it's spoken a lot about how the men are at fault, and I was just wondering if you can share some thoughts or realizations or something from Shastra, so that women don't listen to this class and just kind of take on the victim role and just kind of blame men, because I know women, even women that are practicing Krishna consciousness, that might take this class and run with it and just place blame on men and just do whatever they want in
Yeah.
the sake of Shastra.
There's one particular verse that actually comes to mind. And Lord Kapiladev's instruction to Devahuti, he's describing that the woman should not view the husband as just a source of wealth and protection. Do you know this? I'm trying to. Do you know this verse, Prabhu? I guess let me find it. Anyways, it's quite relevant to your question. Let me try to find it. Give me 1 second. He's basically describing that, the woman shouldn't view just the husband as just being, again, a provider of comfort, because I think it relates marriage life to being a dark well. Give me 1 second. Let me search for it. I wish I knew the Sanskrit for it. 1 second. Can you go to Canto 3? Pull up the index for chapter 29, if you can. Sorry. It's okay, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm just going to speak on it instead. So basically, there's two verses that are which are given, and I'm sorry I don't have the Sanskrit for it, nor do I know it off the top of my head, so I'll just give the essence of it. Lord Kapiladev states that he's talking about the dangers of married life, specifically married life when it's not like a Griyameti, one who just enjoys without actually engaging in any sort of spiritual activity. Of course, we understand that the Grihastha ashram is it can be conducive if one is if the husband and the wife are properly situated, then both can make advancement accordingly. But to your question, it was about women not taking this victim role. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So basically, it's stated that the woman is also to have this proper understanding that the husband is providing these things, but she shouldn't look to him as like this is like the situation where it's like the end all be all. She should also view. I believe she also. It's stated. I don't know exactly how it's worded, so and I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I think is viewing the husband and the children even as more or less like a source of death, if you will, because attachment to these fallible soldiers will not save us from our material situation ultimately. So even the wife is supposed to be, is expected to have that understanding, and in that way she should take responsibility, because though yes, there's a submission to the husband, it's not supposed to be blind. It should be given to one who's qualified. Of course, as Prabhu spoke yesterday, he said that this quote about how one should not become a husband, a guru, what was that? Mother, father. Like, nobody should take these positions without being qualified in order to actually act in that. I will also read this excerpt in this connection. Let me see. It's yeah. So, anyways, it says women in general. This is a purport from Bhagavatam 1:820. Anyways, it's just a little long. The essence of it is that we should a woman should properly submit herself to her husband, given that given that he's qualified, and it should be done with this proper understanding. And if it's not, then she's ultimately, you could say, to blame for misplacing that faith or submission. But at the same time, even if the husband isn't like the best and most qualified, even still, just by woman's chastity, it's understood that she can gain these supernatural powers just by rendering service unto the husband as well. So there's all benefit even still in doing this. But I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
thank you.
Sure.
I also have one more question.
Yes, Master.
So when the karmis and the vikarmis are acting on the sense gratification, taking on sex life and so forth, is the man still bound by taking 50% of the woman's sinful activities, even if they're not married, because there's that bondage that's happening? Or is it only when it's married when they're officially married and through the sanctity of the Vedic Yoga that they actually have that 50%?
That is a technical question I cannot answer, but I can guarantee you that both are punished by that entangling act. I can at least say that much. That's like the key takeaway, because there's nothing auspicious about it, so there's certainly not going to be an exchange of piety. But there probably will be some exchange of sin. So I think how much, how little, I don't know. But yeah, that is a technical question that is certainly above my knowledge. So. Accept that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's a great point. I think, I guess as Chandracharya Prabhu said, you could probably just expect that they're both equally going to incur whatever sin they're going to incur from it. One can't just attain protection just on the basis of having a specific type of body. Because again, when we act outside of Dharma, then we lose the protection of Dharma. That's the basic principle. So.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because I was in a class when I was in Mayapur, and this Master was saying that when a man and woman are cohabitating with each other, they're considered married.
That sounds like speculation.
Thank you for clearing up.
Yeah, I mean, they should be. It's not that just because they're living under the same roof, all of a sudden, like, yeah, they're married. I mean, there you have it. Cohabitation. No, yeah, just cohabitation in and of itself can't just, there should be specific, stating and submission, not just whimsical
yeah, this is like my roommate or something. So that doesn't work. That's speculation for sure.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Karma yoga